Hi all, I have another beautiful, dynamic and attacking game to show you of Leela Chess against Hannibal. This is in the TSEC Season 14, Division 3. Let's see the opening book, knight f3, b6, d4, bishop b7. I think this was the opening start position. We have g3 from Hannibal, d5, bishop g2, e6. White castles, knight d7, e4. Very aggressive, temporary pawn sacrifice. Leela hasn't really moved any of her kingside pieces yet. D takes, knight g5. We have knight g f6, knight c3, and now queen c8. So this piece isn't, at least this piece is not an unprotected liability. We have queen e2, and now bishop b4. Knight c takes e4. Black castles, rook d1, rook e8, bishop d2, and now a5. Not minding double pawns. There'll be enough dynamic play, it seems, here if that's taken. c4 was played, but just in case you want a specific example, bishop takes, a takes. Let's have a look at some simplification. Black ends up playing a move like queen d5, and this pawn kind of suppresses c4. It's very comfortable, that a4 looking at a2. Black's actually slightly better. So it was left. We have c4, h6, knight takes, knight f3, c5. With the rook here against the queen, it makes d5 seemingly impossible. So we have d takes, bishop takes, knight e5. This does exchange off the light square bishops, but are these light squares going to be slightly weakened around the white king? Leela plays knight h7, and it seems as though maybe knight g5 in the future would be handy, looking at these two key squares. And look at this diagonal. There's also the potential for this queen to come across the diagonal, so we've got some coordination potential, especially on f3 and h3. We have bishop c3 being played. h4 is actually possible here. It seems maybe the knight's kicked. But I believe the real snag for doing this is perhaps an unnecessary, seemingly unnecessary weakening move around the king. Even though at this point, if we took this snapshot, it seems as though white's fine. But anyway, bishop c3, rook a7, a nifty way of bringing the rook to the center. Rook e1, f6, knight d3, bishop d6. Which unleashes, maybe unleashes is a strong word, too strong a word, just which attacks the pawn basically on c4. That's protected. Rook e7, knight b2, e5. So blunting this bishop. Knight a4. Are these pawns fragile? Now here things get interesting. It looks as though knight g5 is quite dangerous. If white had played h4 here to prevent knight g5, it seems here f5 is actually very dangerous anyway. For example, like this, with these continuations, with f4 crashing through, it looks as though the pawn chain, the g3 in particular, has been weakened by h4. It has actually literally weakened g3, and it makes this sort of attack pressure more dangerous here when black gets a queen to g4. It looks very dangerous all of a sudden. Maybe even the knight can swing sometimes. e4 can be dangerous, and then fg, and this opens up this bishop as well. So this pawn chain looks to be under fire here. So perhaps that's why h4 wasn't played. Knight a4. And now this pawn, should it be protected? Well, Leela just goes for it with knight g5. And yes, it is hanging. There isn't a trap here, because there's knight d5 on the check, so the pawn is actually taken. On what is black actually threatening, and in fact that's part of playing knight d5 to block the diagonal. So if white played a move like this, then check is dangerous. For example, e4, mega dangerous, crashing through, winning. So it's h4 is another example. The check is just lethal. Yeah, this is rook e2 check, exploiting the pin, celebrating the pin, bang, end of game. So this is actually not just taking up a pawn, it's trying to parry the diagonal pressure with knight d5. And actually, the queen goes to h3 though. And now e4. And we seem to have a familiar theme building up with the knight potentially coming to f3. We have queen f1, queen h5, queen g2, so fianchettoing the queen. Rook e6, which gives the idea that maybe there's a discovery attack sometimes, with bishop takes g3 sometimes. We have the knight going to safety. f5, rook ed1, now knight h3. And this looks already exceptionally dangerous, actually. The rook is defending the bishop. The rook could also switch here, and maybe then f4, and then the dreaded form pawn. Rook d2, rook g6. This is the plan, it seems. And it doesn't matter about a5. As Kasparov has said, you don't worry about a pawn on the queen side when your house is on fire. He's talking about king safety. And he also did mention about pawns around the opponent's king being worth pieces. So we're having both of these two key Kasparov quotations coming into play here. One of the greatest attacking players of all time knew what he was talking about. f4, don't worry about the queen side. Just get up some pawns near the opponent's king. Bishop c7. f3, the form pawn is installed. No joke. It's beyond the joke now. I'm not going to say it. Bishop takes c7, knight takes. We have e3 being played. This is really dangerous. F takes e3. On knight takes, you might wonder, e takes d2 is far too dangerous. If we look at this position with rook e6 here, and that hits the knight, so the knight moves. Then we have rook e2, white's paralysed basically, and f2 is dropping. So knight takes f2, knight takes d1, and then there's rook e1 check on queen takes, or just mating on h2, even better. Yeah, it's all devastating here. So we have actually f takes e3, and now we've actually we've actually got a liberated form pawn, a form pawn which is not even blocked. It's controlling a key escape square, and it's not even blocked, which means the queen can and sometimes join in with queen f3, and that would be checkmate sometimes on f2 and queen f3. That would be almost mating if it wasn't for queen g2. So a very dangerous scenario indeed. Rook takes e3. We have knight d5 hitting the rook. The rook goes back. Knight c7 hitting the rook again. The knight goes here, not subject to immediate harassment from this pesky knight. Rook d5 hitting the queen instead. On knight d5, then the rooks double here, and this is really nice for rook e2. So we have rook d5, knight g5. So there's a big idea of rook e2. That's kind of parried with this. Yeah, for example, just to put it on the board for fun, for kicks, rook e2 threatens mate. So if h4, queen g4, and this is devastating if this position is just desperate for white. White's just crashing through. This position is just all over. The king's going to get mated. So we have rook d2, and now rook e5, which vacates the e4 square. Yeah, taking time out to vacate for knight e4 for knight g3. It's quite good if the knight lands on g3 here. We have rook e1, knight e4, and this is a very desperate move now from white. Rook takes e4. It seems the form pawn is the magic spell of alpha beta engines starting to give up their pieces in desperation, pure desperation and agony. Once the form pawn is installed, the pieces start being given away. That seems to be a pattern here. So here, just losing the exchange. The thing is, queen g1, the form pawn is even mobile. f2, then there's knight takes g3 check, knight e4 check, for example, knight d2 check. We can win the queen or plate like this, even better. Check, mate, crushing. So rook takes e4, rook takes e4, and Leela is saying, do you think these pawns are going to queen? They're a bit far away from queening. In the meantime, your king is a bit precarious. Queen f2, rook c6 hitting the knight just for a laugh. Check, king h7. And now rook e8. Okay, this is hitting the rook protected by the knight. Rook takes e8. knight takes, rook e6 with the idea of rook e2 as well as hitting the knight. This is absolutely crushing. Knight takes g7 was played in pure desperation here. Yeah, rook e2 is just absolutely murderous on knight c7. I mean, we could put that on the board, but you know, there's no check on c2 now. So say this f2, and yeah, you know, this kind of thing is nasty. Ouch. So we have in the game continuation, pardon me, rook takes, knight takes, rook e6. This desperate knight takes g7, giving pieces away to stave off being mated as the lesser evil all of a sudden. King takes a4, queen f5, and the game's adjudicated here as a win for black. Yeah, the pawns are not really going to go that far. Say king g1, check, and we can just win the queen, for example. And it's very easy to win that after. Okay, another crushing win with the black pieces. The AB engine's totally oblivious, without a clue about certain aspects of attacking strategy, like pawns around the king. The precursor to that was the weakened light squares, of course. You know, winning material on the queen side, but allowing this build-up here was fatal for king safety. If you enjoyed this game, then please click on the top left box, which should appear shortly, to become a member at chessworld.net, play against other YouTubers. You can also check the YouTube analysis of these games in advance, or updated analysis from the improved menu, learn from the Masters YouTube order button. Comments, questions, donations, see the description. Like, shares, subscribes with the notification bell hit. All really appreciated. And also check out the Teespring store in the description. Okay, thanks very much.